Small Town Faces is a short docu-series created by Southwestern Montana News. Everybody has a story to tell, and many wish they would have that story on film. On Small Town Faces, we'll start with the stories from the residents of Dillon, and we will eventually work our way to other neighboring towns. We hope you enjoy this series, and be sure to thank our sponsors as they help make this possible. If you'd like to become a sponsor, or if you have a unique story you could tell, email southwesternmtnews@gmail.com. We hope you enjoy the series. On today's episode of Small Town Faces, we sat down with some local veterans who talked about their experience while serving our country. The veterans were at J.C. Park enjoying a Beaver County Chamber of Commerce and Agriculture event, Brats for the Brave.
All right, my name is Monty Elliott, and I was in the Navy for 2 years and 4 months, and that included 1 year as a gunner's mate on PBRs in the Trang and Cameron Bay. And it's an interesting story. I grew up in the 60s watching the Vietnam War on TV every night. And when I signed up for the Navy at a high school thing, I signed up because I wanted to go and help, get rid of the communists. So I went through basic training at the Great Lakes, and I went back for 16 weeks of gunner's mate school at the Great Lakes, where we learned every gun that the Navy had, from the Colt 45, the M16, M30 machine gun, 55 caliber machine gun, 60 millimeter mortars, 80 millimeter mortars, 16 weeks. And then had a month off and was going to Vietnam. And I got to Vietnam in February of 1970, and I went to a little outpost called the Trang, where we had 2 PBRs and 4 skimmer boats. And our job was to patrol the coastline around all the shippings, military ships and commercial ships, and protect them from zappers or any kind of attacks. And those were the boats that we used to be on attacks. And I was a gunner's mate, so my responsibility was all the guns. And one of the interesting things that happened after I left in the Trang, I went to the base in Cameron Bay, which was a huge, big military base. We had an outpost up on top of a hill up there overlooking the bay and the docks down there. And October 9th, my birthday, when I turned 20 years old, we were at a little bar right up there where the control booth is and the chow hall. And we just started celebrating my birthday and another kid Schultz's birthday, when all of a sudden a big, huge explosion went off right behind us. And when we come to find out, it was a Chinese Communist 105 rocket that missed hitting the top of the hill where we were at by like 75 yards. And we all went into general quarters, and I was a machine gun captain, and I did some shooting over across the bay over in the jungle over there. And that's the only time that I ever shot machine gun or any other kind of gun. Maybe at an enemy, and I like to think that I didn't hit anybody. But my whole perspective changed. When I first got there, I was gung-ho. You couldn't tell anybody apart. They all looked the same. They were all poor people in fishing junks and sampans and growing rice and the little village there, And in 2 weeks, my whole perspective, my whole paradigm switched, and I wondered, why are we over here doing what we're doing? And then I didn't like doing what we were doing, and I had to stay another 11 months not liking doing what we were doing, and I got into trouble a few times because I was kind of against authority or rebellious or whatever. One time I was even under court-martial, which I ended up getting out of that, but I had to spend another 11 months there doing the same stuff that I was doing when I wanted to do it, and now I didn't want to do it anymore. So there's a few other instances, different things, but everybody got stories, but that's kind of a conclusion of. And then I got back out of Vietnam. I was in Vietnam for a year. I came back to the United States, had 30 days leave, which is like I came home and nobody really recognized that I was home or had been there or anything. It wasn't no big deal to anybody. Nobody. I did see some friends. And then I went back and got on a ship in San Diego. We were there and sailed one night, one day at sea, up to San Francisco, where the USS Piedmont, that's the ship I was on, went into dry dock. For like 8 months, we were going to be sitting with the ship, all the water drained out from around it, and be chiseling paint and cleaning up chiseled paint. And I ended up getting escorted off the ship by an Navy orderly because I had seen 3 psychiatrists in one day, and they took me back to the ship. I had loaded my bags, went to kind of a little, not a nut house place, but a little barracks where there were some other guys, and started doing what one guy called the circle jerk, which was we all sat around in circles telling psychiatrists what our stories were and stuff like that. Anyway, in about 7 or 8 weeks, I got discharged, an honorable discharge, and my medical thing said that I had acute adult situational reaction. And I was glad to get out. And that's part of my story.
There we go.
Hi, my name is Swede Trotzen, and I live here in Dillon. Retired from the Forest Service, and I served with the Marines, 1st Marine Division in Korea. It was after the truce was signed, so I never saw combat. But my main assignment was on the demilitarized zone. That's the 38th parallel in Korea. And we lived mainly in bunkers and tents. And our biggest problem was rats. We had lots of rats. And those rats carried fleas that could transmit hemorrhagic fever. And an emergency room physician here at our hospital here in Dillon tells me survival rate from that hemorrhagic fever was 50%. Our company commander, Captain Black, caught it, but he survived. And so that's the main story I want to get across here, that I'm not a hero, just did my thing on the DMZ. I also wrote a book, Smoke Jumper and Other Stories. Debbie sells it here at the bookstore in Dillon, and it's got some stories in there about my service in the Marines, as well as search and rescue and with the Forest Service.
Looking for made in Montana food products? Look no further than Town and Country Foods of Dillon.